Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and at long last, it is finally complete. I spent over half a year walking and slowly accumulating XLs for Coalossal, and thanks to Roly-Coly being a featured spawn during one of the Go Fest hours, I have finally finished the quest, and XL Colossal has been built. This Pokemon has a bigger stat product than Zygarde. The bulk is absolutely obscene. However, its moveset is honestly pretty bad, as it's stuck with Fire Spin, Flame Charge, and Rock Slide. For today's Ultra League team, I'm running Shadow Toucannon as the lead, Seismitoad as the save switch, and Coalossal as the closer. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and we get the Dream Lead in the first match, Shadow Toucannon into Mimikyu. Opponent save switch is Corviknight, I bank a Drill Peck, and now it's time to unleash XL Colossal. Coalossal's stat product is absolutely absurd. Corviknight goes for the payback, and Coalossal just tanks it like it's nothing. Even with the double super effective stand attacks, Payback does not pick up the 2-hit KO. My opponent shields the Flame Charge, but now my Fire Spin damage is boosted. They can go for a second Payback, and Coalossal is just not going to care. Second Payback lands, Coalossal able to tank it, and make it to a Flame Charge. Now my opponent's forced to double shield if they want switch advantage. And if there's something scarier in the Ultra League than a 2-0 shield Shadow Toucannon, I have yet to meet it. So I bring in Toucannon, even if they full set the payback, I'm still very okay with taking that damage. I can now double up on Drill Pecks, and whatever my opponent has in the back is going to get hit with a Shadow Beak Blast. Drill Peck will easily be knocking out the Corviknight. My opponent is going to reveal their final Pokemon in the back, which is going to be Belly Bolt. Belly Bolt is still going to take some pretty massive resisted damage from Beak Blast, and then I can just bring in Seismitoad. My opponent pivots out, sending in the Mimikyu, but I can immediately break through its disguise and debuff its attack with Icy Wind. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. We pick up a terrible lead in the next match, Shadow Toucannon into Tinkaton. I throw a few pecks, save switch into the Seismitoad, and get instantly hard-walled by Golisopod. This game could not have had much of a worse start. This is absolutely terrible. I was able to apply an attack drop with the Icy Wind, but I can't ever really damage this Pokemon. Icy Wind and Earth Power are both walled. Unfortunately, Seismitoad has been sent to jail. I'm going to fire off Earth Power. To my surprise, Earth Power actually did a really decent amount of resisted damage. That's going to force my opponent to fire off back-to-back Aqua Jets here, so they should be forced to throw away all their energy. I reach for the Earth Power. I'm able to get there, but I will lose charge attack priority. Very nice counting from my opponent. Aqua Jet will take the knockout. I can bring back in Toucannon, and Toucannon is going to get the full Peck farmed out, exiting with a ton of energy. I'm going to hold on to this energy, and then just look to pivot into the Coalossal. In the back is Guzzlord, and this is not what I was hoping to see. Even though this isn't a hard counter to Coalossal by any means, Guzzlord has a pretty massive pacing advantage and obviously has a resistance to Fire Spin. The good news for me is that Brutal Swing does absolutely no damage onto the bulky Coalossal, but the bad news is I have been pretty thoroughly countered this entire game. I believe that 2 more Brutal Swings will still fail to take the knockout here, but I am rapidly running out of HP. So I'm going to farm up to the back-to-back Rock Slides, but unfortunately I will lose charge attack priority. My opponent is now doubled up on Brutal Swings, and I know they win CMP, so I'm going to go for a bit of an interesting play. Instead of throwing the Rock Slide, I'm going to bank the Rock Slide and actually go for the catch on a Toucannon. Toucannon gets one-shot by a Gigaton Hammer anyway, so taking a Brutal Swing isn't really that important. I undertap the Beak Blast, predicting the Tinkaton switch in, and for a resisted move, that Beak Blast does a horrifying amount of damage. It looks like the next Beak Blast might actually take the knockout here, so my opponent will actually have to start putting up shields. They bulldoze bait me, I farm up to the Beak Blast, and I'm going to go for the Drill Peck bait. Switch timer should be up soon. I'm going to go for the combo play, fire off the Flame Charge, but I clicked the wrong side, and I accidentally clicked the Rock Slide. That is a big misplay. My opponent will put up the shield. They send in the Guzzlord. Guzzlord gets farmed down, and oh my goodness, Coalossal is just simply too bulky. Coalossal exits with the Rock Slide loaded. That gets a little bit of chip damage onto the Tinkaton, and the game comes down to this. A 50-50. Will they bait? Will they full send? I put up the shield. It's the Gigaton Hammer, and somehow we survive. The alignment in that game was terrible, but the endless bulk of Coalossal and the insane offensive pressure from Shadow Toucannon means we're going home with the win. We move to game number 3, Shadow Toucannon into Shadow Golurk. This is a dominant lead win. My opponent safe switches into Corviknight, and I do what I did before. Bank the Drill Peck, send in Coalossal, and then you're about to see a very unhappy Steel Bird. Corviknight goes for the Air Cutter, fishing for the boost, trying to change their luck, but no boost comes through, and they are just in an absolute worst-case scenario. Flame Charge is going to be no shielded this time, and this should set up a pretty nice Fire Spin farm down for the Coalossal. Add to that the fact that I'm going to be able to get a +1 flame charge into the Golurk as well. They're able to make a last second move, but we both know this is just only an air cutter. I do not have to respect this. Air cutter does absolutely nothing, and my opponent, who is clearly, I guess they must have been ABA weak to Toucanon, resigns the match. We pick up a very bad lead in the next match, Shadow Toucanon into Shadow Malamar. Shadow Malamar can absolutely shred through Shadow Toucanon in the 2s, so even though we have the same pacing and I win charge stack priority, the thing to watch is my health bar. I am getting absolutely deleted by Psywaves. I have no way of knowing if a better Shadow Toucanon would be able to tank the Psywaves better, but unfortunately, I have a pretty bad Shadow Toucanon for the Ultra League, so these Psywaves are deleting me. My opponent actually makes a very nice catch, able to save the Malamar and catch onto the Corviknight, and I rebank as much energy as possible before sending in Coalossal. Coalossal's bulk is going to be a very big advantage against these Corviknights. Payback, again, that just does nothing. And I should be able to overfarm quite a bit, and I believe this is range where Flame Charge can take the knockout. Not having to take another payback would be quite nice. Flame Charge does take the KO, and I do exit with a decent amount of residual energy. My opponent reveals their final Pokemon in the back is going to be Shadow Feraligatr, and I actually feel like I'm in a very good spot to win. I can fire off the Rock Slide that hits for huge damage on a Feraligatr. Feraligatr will finally be able to take the knockout, but I'm one away from a Drill Peck on the Shadow Toucanon, and I still have a very healthy Seismitoad. Seismitoad in the Great League is strong, but can be a little bit glassy at times. Seismitoad in the Ultra League is actually very, very bulky. I shield up the Hydro Cannon, now I can look to overfarm quite significantly, and I believe they're low enough that I can knock out with the Icy Wind. So I fire off the Icy Wind. At this point, the game is basically over, but no, they live on 1 HP. They have the Hydro Cannon loaded, and them living that on 1, unfortunately, just guaranteed lost me the game. My opponent ends up playing to a CMP die that they do not win, but unfortunately, even that is not going to be enough to save me. Had I just thrown the Earth Power, I would have been fine, but I did not. I went for the Icy Wind. I was way too greedy. They're able to barely hang on to the Icy Wind, and that greed ends up costing me the game. Malamar lead is very, very bad for this team, and we were able to get it close, but unfortunately, I was just too greedy. I tried to save as much energy as possible on the Seismitoad, and the Feraligatr tanks it on 1 HP and knocks me out with the Hydro Cannon. Great lead in the next match, Shadow Toucanon into Mimikyu once again. My opponent save switches Melmetal, and here I make a pretty big error. Coalossal can do pretty well against Melmetal just because 2 Dynamic Punches barely do not pick up the 2-hit KO. However, I have a Seismitoad on the team. Why didn't I bring in the Seismitoad? I will be honest, I could watch this battle back 100 times and have no idea why I brought in Coalossal here, but I think I'm honestly in a decent amount of trouble now. Even though Dynamic Punch normally doesn't pick up the 2-hit KO, they've gotten so many Thunder Shocks on me that I believe that Dynamic will actually take the knockout here. So I put up the shield as they go for Dynamic, but they pivot out and send in Mimikyu. Now here, I know this move is going to be doing no damage, but I need to ensure that I can survive the play rough, so I actually full send the Beak Blast. That's a massive amount of energy down the drain, but this should ensure that the play rough at -1 attack is not going to be knocking me out. And then I can overfarm and try and go for the CMP tie. So I'm going to throw 5 here, go for the Drill Peck, but I just don't know my Mimikyu residuals. It's been a bit since I've played against one. I lose all the energy, and I am just playing this absolutely horrendously. I bring in Coalossal, trying to farm down. I realize I can't quite get the farm down, so I may as well boost up my attack and go for the Flame Charge. Flame Charge is going to be shielded. My opponent pivots out. They reveal their final Pokemon in the back is Empoleon. Hold on a minute. The fact that I brought in the Coalossal on accident may have actually won me this game, because now I still have a very healthy Seismitoad, and Seismitoad should be able to get the 1v3 sweep here. Coalossal gets KO'd, but it was able to put in a massive amount of work. I believe they do not have a move loaded yet on the Mimikyu. They should still be 1 short, and if they're 1 short on the Mimikyu, then I should just be able to win the game. My opponent pivots into the Melmetal, trying to maybe force me to throw energy, but I can overfarm and guarantee that I exit the matchup with the Icy Wind loaded. And this Icy Wind has Mimikyu's name on it. Now I just have to look at the top right. If I see Mimikyu's typing, which I do, I just click the Icy Wind, Mimikyu is going to be KO'd, and there's just no HP left on the Empoleon. I should be able to knock it out in 1 Mud Shot. Back in comes the Empoleon, Mud Shot takes the KO, and we're able to get the win. We move to the next match, Shadow Toucanon into Zygarde. Now this is a surprisingly good matchup for Toucanon. Toucanon just has the pacing advantage, and Beak Blast is going to inflict a horrifying amount of damage onto the Zygarde. So I'm just going to full send. Beak Blast connects, devastating damage. My opponent safe switches into a Shadow Steelix, and boy do I have the remedy for Shadow Steelix, as in comes the Toad. Seismitoad firing off Earth Power, huge damage onto the Steelix. Steelix has farmed up to a potential Earthquake. I survive Earthquake, but so far they are super weak to the Toad. So I put up the shield as they go for the Earthquake. Now I should just be able to farm up very close to 100 energy. I build up to the back-to-back Earth powers. I can even take the knockout here with Icy Wind. And I don't know what my opponent had in the back, but clearly they were triple weak to the Toad as they immediately concede the match. We pick up a terrible lead in the next match. Shadow Toucanon into Stunfisk. I bank energy, save switch into the Seismitoad, and I am incredibly grateful to see my opponent fire off a Mud Bomb. It appears they don't have a strong answer to a Seismitoad save switch, which is very good news for me because I'm ABA weak to the Stunfisk. Toucanon and my Coalossal in the back both get absolutely destroyed. My opponent fires off another Mud Bomb. I'm going to hit back hard with the Earth Power. Earth Power connects, and my opponent pivots out and brings in the Togekiss. Now, Kiss will be immediately debuffed by Icy Wind. Honestly, even down energy, I imagine Kiss probably does pretty well into the Seismitoad. And now I bring back in Toucanon, and I'm going to be full set into Beak Blast. In hindsight, this very well could have been Drill Peck range, but after losing that previous game because I went for the Icy Wind and it didn't KO, I'm just going to be throwing the big move. My opponent goes for a Psyshock there. Aura Sphere is the more efficient move to go for, but either way, it's not really going to matter as we win CMP and Drill Peck will be the end of the Kiss. Back in comes Stunfisk. Stunfisk is going to be able to outpace, and I decide that I want to try and get shields down. I have Coalossal in the back, so at the very least, I can shield and pressure away my opponent's final shield, or just get rid of the Stunfisk. Either way, I feel like I'm in a pretty decent position. Drill Peck is going to be no shield. Stunfisk falls. In the back is Fortress, and Coalossal is about to absolutely feast. My opponent fires off a Sand Tomb right away. They do throw an alignment, so I'm able to get an entire free Fire Spin. And now I can just boost up my Fire Spins with Flame Charge. Even though Sand Tomb is double super effective, look at Coalossal, man. It just tanked that so comfortably. My opponent can now go for a second Sand Tomb or a Rock Tomb. Either way, it's not going to matter. I'm able to tank that, get that full farm down to the Fortress, and the bulk on this Pokemon is just absolutely stupid. We pick up a terrible lead in the next match. Shadow Toucanon into Shadow Abomasnow. Even though Peck also hits them for super effective damage, you can clearly see the Powder Snows are hitting significantly harder. They can just fully farm me down on the 2 shield. So my only play here is just to try and take a shield advantage, and then hope that once I can get Abomasnow out of the way, then Seismitoad will be able to sweep in the endgame. So I bring in Coalossal, the Fire Spin shredding through the Abomasnow, but Abomasnow will get some chip damage here as they fire off Energy Ball. I get the farm down, exiting with energy, in comes Blastoise, and this is a problem. I'm going to throw one Fire Spin, pivot out, and send it to Seismitoad. They're going to stay in, desync the switch timers, and fire off Hydro Cannon. I put up the shield in the back. It's Togekiss, and unfortunately, I don't believe this is a game that I'm going to be able to win. Had I stayed in with the Coalossal and banked a Rock Slide, then maybe there's a chance that I could get them low, go for a combo play, and try and figure out a way out. But unfortunately, I did not. And at this point, this just really feels like an impossible game. Icy Wind is unable to pick up the 2-hit KO here, so Kiss is always able to hang on. I reach for the Rock Slide, but in the moment, I had forgotten that I did not bank it. So they're able to get an Aura Sphere, and then bring in the Blastoise. I can fire off the Rock Slide, getting a little bit of chip damage, but realistically, I can never farm anything down. The Kiss will always have to be KO'd with an Icy Wind, and I'm gonna need to get the shield down from the opponent and land an Earth Power onto the Blastoise, and to be honest, I'm not even sure an Earth Power will KO. The only way out that I see is maybe if they end up shielding an Icy Wind, but I don't even think Earth Power KO is here, and my opponent knows it. They no-shield the Icy Wind. I'm not gonna waste anyone's time. I will concede the match. We see a very spicy lead from the opponent in the next match as I lead Shadow Toucanon into Gliscor. Toucanon should win charge attack priority. I bait with the Drill Peck, but my opponent makes a very nice catch as we're able to send in Miltank. Now, Miltank's not a Pokemon I've seen for quite some time. I'm going to bank energy and then send in XL Colossal. Thunderbolt, really not going to be doing anything on the Coalossal. My opponent throws an Ice Beam. Oh my goodness. If they're on Body Slam Ice Beam, then they're completely walled. This is basically Christmas. Coalossal is in such a dominant position. My opponent ends up revealing that they do have Thunderbolt, but even had they thrown the Thunderbolt, back-to-back Thunderbolts still would not have come close to knocking out Coalossal. Now I can boost up my damage with a Flame Charge, in comes the Gliscor, and even though Sand Tube is double super effective, I just don't buy that it's KOing, so I no-shield, I survived the Sand Tomb. Oh my goodness, XL Colossal, the bulk. Rock Slide does very nice damage. In the back is a Tapu Koko. Oh my goodness, the spice from this trainer is incredible. Unfortunately, we have a very good answer to Tapu Koko. This is a Brave Bird Tapu Koko that does huge damage. My opponent is absolutely emptying the Spice Cabinet. Unfortunately, Seismitoad is just too bulky in the Ultra League, where there's just not really a path for my opponent to get a win here. I'll put up the shield on Seismitoad as they go for the Nature's Madness, but this was a CMP tie. I've locked into the Icy Wind, they're forced to put up the shield, and when they do, then I can just always win the game with 2 Cannon. It's a simul switch, 2 Cannon into Gliscor, I can fire off the Drill Peck should be knocking out the Gliscor, and then all they have left is that Tapu Koko. Drill Peck may have been enough, but let's guarantee the knockout with the Beak Blast. Opponent sees the writing on the wall, and concedes the match. Hopping into the final match, great lead, 2 Cannon into Primeape. Now here I make a pretty massive misplay. It's been a bit since I've played Ultra League. I genuinely forgot that this was a CMP tie that 2 Cannon lost. Pretty big error on my part, but luckily my opponent ends up bailing me out by shielding and then pivoting into Shadow for Alligator. Oh my goodness, they're running a team that is so incredibly weak to the Toucan. I can shield up, double up on Drill Pecks, and even just with 10 Pecks, I've already put them into Shadow Drill Peck range. Look at this, if they no shield, they're guaranteed to get KO'd. They no shield, they get KO'd, and if they bring back in that Primeape, then I can just throw the Drill Peck before they can make a move. My opponent's gonna wait down the timer here, timer hits 0, in comes Primeape, I go for the Drill Peck, there's the catch, and they send in Tinkaton. Bad news for the Tinkaton, I'm gonna introduce it to Coalossal. I'm gonna rebank a Drill Peck, bring in Coalossal, and oh my goodness, this poor Tinkaton. Bulldoze is double super effective, but it's still gonna be doing nothing. They go for the Gigaton, even Gigaton can't 2-hit KO. Gigaton Hammer has the exact same stats as Precipice Blades. A neutral Precipice Blades clone cannot 2-hit KO XL Colossal. They're going to make a last-second move. It's going to be the Bulldoze that does absolutely nothing. Back in comes the Primeape. They're just getting farmed down. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. And now some final thoughts on the team and XL Colossal now that the months of grinding have paid off and I finally have it. Honestly, XL Colossal ended up being a ton of fun. It is a Pokemon that has a ton of limitations because it honestly has a very poor moveset. Fire Spin, it's just not a great fast move by modern standards, and while Flame Charge and Rock Slide are adequate charge attacks, it's really nothing to write home about. Coalossal, the only reason it has any kind of merit is that absolutely absurd stat product. I believe pre-release, people were theorizing that it could get released with Incinerate, and with Incinerate, this would have been the most broken Pokemon to ever exist. So, in hindsight, actually having an XL Colossal finally, I can understand why it did not release with Incinerate, because my goodness, can you imagine this thing with Incinerate, with that kind of stat product, and that kind of stats on its fast move? It would have been absolutely absurd. It would have won every neutral matchup. It probably would have beat Licky Licky even harder than it beats it now, even though rollout hits for super effective. Now, XL Colossal, is it a Pokemon that is worth the investment? Currently, I would probably lean towards no. It is extremely difficult to get Coalossal XLs. I was able to catch quite a few during its initial release event. I ended up having to walk it for 6 months, in which I was able to get maybe like 330-ish kilometers, and then it ended up spawning as part of one of the Go Fest hours, and so I think I caught 20 during that hour and then traded them all for the 2 trade XLs during the trade day. So even with that, it was a relentless grind, slowly accumulating these XLs until it gets a better moveset. I don't think it's a Pokemon that I would run out to build, but the team ended up going pretty positive. Granted, it had some very strong teammates. Shadow Toucan is obviously incredibly OP, and Seismitoad is an amazing pick as well, but we were actually able to re-hit Legend with this team. We started below 3,000 and we ended above 3,000, so even with the queue times being kind of rough, it was fun to kind of see the payoff of all these months of having it as my buddy at the start of videos. XL Colossal is here, and man, it did take quite a few names. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed watching today's video, please do leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and an extra special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide to the channel is so appreciated, so thank you guys so very much, and until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.